Hi everyone. If you are looking for the video to answer all your questions about sending your kids to top schools in London, then this is the video for you. Hi everyone, Arinzeh here with Onyx Property Team and Keller Williams. So looking forward to this conversation. We're going to be talking to Nicky Sakpoba of Panova Education. Oftentimes when I'm working with international buyers, obviously when they're coming over as families, the top questions are going to be around schools. And so we're going to have this great conversation. Nicky's going to tell us a little bit about her business, and then we're going to dive right into some of the top tips if you're an international family or if you're relocating to London that you're going to want to know about the educational system here. So thanks, Nicky, for joining my YouTube channel in this conversation. If you would, tell us a little bit about Panova and education, how you got started, who you might be focused on, and then we'll dive into some specific questions.
Sure. Hi, morning, Ugo. Thank you. Well, thank you for inviting me to be here. It's great to be chatting with you about this. I know we can normally talk for hours about this topic because there is an awful lot to talk about. But I think, you know, our primary business has always been school placements, and usually we work in the boarding school market with boarding school placements for international families who are looking for access into UK education and want to send their kids to boarding school. It is, I'm not going to lie, quite a complicated system in the UK. And sometimes when we're working with international clients, it does take a while to go through all the different options and to explain how it all works and how the application system works. So that's something we're very used to. We've been going at Panova since 2014. We set up the business really because my business partner, Debbie, was based actually in Abuja in Nigeria, and found that a lot of parents were coming to her and asking for help with finding the right school in the UK. And that really was key to it all. It's finding the right school, it's finding the right fit, it's finding the right school for your child. And each child is different, as we know. So we really wanted to offer a hand-holding service to our clients that would allow us just to find them the right school for their child. Right school means happy child, means successful educational journey. And, you know, we wanted to make sure that everything sort of fits together, particularly, I think, when children are coming from abroad and entering boarding school, maybe for the first time, they're moving away from home. It can be an overwhelming experience. So you need to make sure that every box is ticked and that all the criteria are met. So I'll talk a little bit about the London. Are you okay for me to just go ahead? And
I think you've already touched on such critical points, because kind of like in my business, where obviously people can find their home for themselves, people can find the schools for themselves, but really when you have all the components that you need to consider, sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right? And if you don't settle your child comfortably, I mean, that's just truly the most important thing, isn't it? So
it really is. And just to give you an example, I mean, we had a client who came to us. They were actually moving. He was moving with his firm. His firm were moving him to London. And as part of his relocation package, he'd been offered a property firm in London who were going to find him a property. But actually, and then they wanted us to come on board for education. But actually, when we got a little bit more involved, we realized that what he wanted in terms of education was something very specific. So they wanted to look at faith schools, and we know that you know, they were looking for Jewish schools, and that there's particular areas in London where you might find more Jewish schools that might be better to live, because it's so important that the property is actually near the school, because that increases your chances of getting a place at that school. So unless you tie these things together, it's just not going to work. But ordinarily, you know, we would want to work with a property consultant like yourselves to just, you know, we would be working with you, and you would be looking at areas, you would be looking at, because there's so many criteria, right? There's so many criteria that people need to look at. They would be asking you for the things they'd be looking for in a property and for area, and they would be asking us what schools were in that particular area, and even things like distance to school. So we would look at, you know, well, if you're going to take this property, which you love, how close is that to the nearest schools? And actually, what's the probability of you getting into those schools? So it's really, really important to tie all these things together with experts that, you know, have the knowledge and understand sort of how the London market works. I mean, just to sort of touch a little bit, and you know, don't want to sort of make it all sound too complicated, but essentially in the UK, You've got primary schools. Obviously, you've got nursery schools for children younger than 4, but essentially schooling
Nursery schools are called reception, is that correct?
No, the nursery schools would be, from age 0 really up to 4. So if you're a working parent and you don't, there are different options you can look at. You can have maybe childcare at home and a nanny at home, or some parents choose to have their child in a nursery school for the social aspects and that sort of thing. So you would have nursery schools where children play and children are looked after up to the age of 4, and then at age 4 our formal education system starts. So you would enter primary school and go into the first class being called reception. And that then moves on from year 1, reception year 1, and all the way up to year 6. And then you would move through to secondary school and continue your education through until you're 18. In the UK, we have a system of exams at age 16, GCSE exams. And then there are further exams at age 18, either A-levels, which is most common, or a lot of schools now turning to the IB as well, which is sort of gaining in popularity here. But essentially, we do have schools that test, and children are prepared to sit exams at 16 and at 18.
Double check something with you. So the secondary school, so you mentioned primary is from year 1, which is reception, unto 6. Then secondary, what are the classes of secondary school? Do you call it year 7 or?
Yeah, you'd start at year 7, exactly. And then year 10 and year 11 would be your 2 years of GCSE. So you'd be preparing to sit for those exams at the end of year 11. And then your final 2 years at school, year 12 and 13, we call that the 6th form. And that's where you would prepare for your A-level exams. And usually in the 6th form, you're 17 turning 18, so you're afforded a few more privileges in 6th form. For example, most schools you'd be maybe allowed to go out at lunchtime, or there's a few more privileges as you're now at the top of the school, as there should be really. So that's how the school system works here in terms of age. Now, we do obviously have a system like other countries do as well, where there is a state education provided by the government and state schools. And we also have independent schools, sometimes called private schools, sometimes called public schools, which sounds very confusing. It makes no sense whatsoever. But if you hear anything referred to as a public school or a private school or an independent school, it essentially means it's a fee-paying school.
Got it. Okay, so what you can be clear on is a state school is the free education, or what we in America would be considering the public school. So that's where probably the confusion comes in. So
there is confusion.
Free, or by the government, and then everything else is paid, and that might be called either public, private, or independent.
That's right. Yes, exactly. Private schools, there are very good number of primary schools, private schools at primary level and at secondary level. You can imagine that in cities like London, they do get very oversubscribed. There is a lot of demand for private schools. So our advice is always really to start early, start the search early. And the beauty with independent schools is that you can start that search from abroad. You don't need to wait to get here and relocate here to do that. You can do that as well. We say start as early as possible, just even to get your child's name down, because there is so much demand for places. So if you're applying to state schools, to government schools, you have to be here in the UK in order to do that. You have to have an address, and you normally are asked to have a utility bill as well as proof of your address. So oftentimes we find that our clients will move here, and they will get an address, but then sometimes you have to wait for a utility bill. Then you do your application through your local authority, and then there is a little bit of a wait. You may not get allocated a school place straight away. So that's something we need to make clients aware of, that you may arrive with your family, but you may still have to wait a few weeks before a school place is allocated. So it makes sense, if you can, to move during the school holiday periods, to move during the summer break, or the Christmas break or the Easter break, because that can help. Your children will be on holiday anyway, rather than you feel as a parent, oh, they're missing school, they've had a few months out.
you don't want that lapse. And maybe even particularly if, again, if we're making people aware that if you are, two parent household, maybe one might arrive a few weeks early, get that housing situation settled such that they can have the address and proof of address and everything.
Absolutely.
And we transition over.
Absolutely, yeah. It's and as you'll know, I mean, it's always timing. There's always sort of looking at timing and when the best time works, and schools are exactly the same, and that's something that we'd help clients with, to put a bit of a timeline in place, and work out how best to do it. Independent schools, it's very different. You can apply from anywhere. You can apply from your home country. You can start that process really early. And it's actually a good idea to start it early, because a lot of the independent schools in London, particularly, as you can imagine, in the very sort of family areas, they do get very oversubscribed. There are a lot of applications for every place. So the earlier that those applications can be done, the better.
Sure.
Thanks so much for watching. Make sure to check out the other videos on my YouTube channel, where I share great things about the London property market and living in this incredible city. So that's Arinzeh with Onyx Property Team and Keller Williams. Bye for now.